Winston Davies. Winston, you spent a short time in prison, not too long.
Yeah.
What for?
Possession of marijuana.
Oh dear, Winston, what are you doing? What are you doing? But anyway, you got out. But what, in your view, though, when you were there, did you feel that it was a little bit of a soft touch?
No, not at all. I mean, the fact of having your freedom taken away, that's a big thing. You know, when you don't have your name, you're stripped of pretty much everything you've got. That in itself, for me, was a big punishment, clearly a deterrent because I haven't returned. And it was an opportunity for me to learn skills which I've used since I've been out.
But the criticism is that people are in these prisons, nothing's much is happening, some of them in their cells for ages, and they're not really learning any skills. So all they're doing is just binging on things like daytime TV. I mean, I was reading one thing where they're on Twitter. There was a prisoner tweeting out to somebody that he'd done something to, and he was on Twitter, and he was... I mean, that is going on.
Yeah, I think at the moment the situation is that the prisons are overwhelmed, under-resourced. We've had COVID, so that's put a lot of restrictions. And I think, like the article says, prisons have been slow to get back to what should be a normal working environment. But the fact is, you've got prisons where you've got X amount of jobs and too many prisoners for those jobs. So the rest of the prisoners, they are going to be sitting there, maybe going to the gym, maybe going to healthcare or whatever it is to get out their cell for a few hours, but not actually doing anything meaningful. So those prisoners, they need some way of getting them to actually work rather than just sitting there.
Because I know that we've talked about this before, and you've mentioned that there are people who you know are about to be released who've spent time just in cells doing pretty much nothing.
100%.
And even you are concerned about those people being released because they will not assimilate.
100%. But it goes back to then the question about how we see prisons. So the purpose of being people are going to prison and then the outcomes we're trying to get from that. So the purpose of being in prison, do we say that we just want to lock them up for as long as possible, 22, 23, 24 hours a day, and then they just get let out with no rehabilitation and, you know, we pick up the bill for that because they're going to reoffend and come back in and it's 40-odd grand a year to keep them in prison? Or do we turn around and say, well, actually, no, we need to put a focus on the purpose of being in prison is to take away their freedom, that's the punishment, but the outcome of it is that we want them to be rehabilitated so they contribute back to society, don't go back to prison, and that we don't have to pick up the bill for it.
But currently prisons aren't doing that, so in your view, you said that you don't think they're too soft, but they are. If they're just sitting there watching TV, doing nothing...
They need to put in structures in place that incentivise the prisoners to actually, like I said, pull their finger out, like you said a minute ago. But that's a change in shape of the whole of the prison landscape. That's not just saying, get out of bed. You actually need to give them incentives and actually show them. There's not enough resources put into mental health services. There's not enough resources put into training of officers, building up rapport with the prisoners. So therefore, there's not enough to actually get them moving at the moment.
But with all that, then all they're going to do is sit down and watch daytime TV. So in my view, them doing that makes the prisoners pretty soft. I mean, they're just watching TV, isn't it?
But as it stands at the moment, there's nothing for them to do. And if you leave them to do nothing, and they're likely that they've not been working or struggled with working, struggled with mental health, lack of education is what got them in prison in the first place. So if you don't give them a structure and something to follow and mandate that they need to get out and work 9 to 5 like a normal working person, and that they need to be doing the things that normal people would do when they're going to get released, as the article says, then yeah, they are going to sit around. That is going to be too soft.
It seems a bit annoying, though, that, you know, I think a lot of the victims of these crimes, if they're still alive in many cases, will be quite annoyed to see that. They're just sitting around doing... We would like to see them do some sort of hard graft.
Yeah, 100%, but then they're going to be more annoyed when they see these people getting out after a year, 2 years, and going to commit a crime to somebody else.